Hello, today I will be reading the sequel to A Wise Mullet, Old Midler Saves the Day, written by Timothy A. Weeks. Now this book is the second book in the series of 3, so make sure to go listen to the first book if you haven't already, and make sure to stay tuned for the third book. In a calm, beautiful marsh known as Pretty Bayou, 2 mullet jumped all summer long. He called her Silver, and she called him Goldie. They were as happy as mullet could ever be. Autumn came, and then a full moon, so Goldie and Silver left Pretty Bayou and joined a school that swam down the bay and out of the pass, into the Gulf and offshore to spawn. Far, far away in the muddy Cook Bayou, a middling mullet was starting a journey that would test his gizzard's mettle. After losing 2 mates in one strike of a net, most mullet would hide under a stump or flee up a slough, but not old Midler, whose fainting days were through. Just one notion was a-buzzin' in old Midler's noggin, as he departed Cook Bayou and entered East Bay. I will search until I find my buddy. He searched from Apalachicola to the Florida Keys, every creek, bayou, and bay where mullet were known to be, dodging cast nets and snatched hooks that live long way. Many bizarre species old Midler did see, but not a sight nor scale of long-lost Goldie. Sunshine days and blue sky views turned to dark, dangerous nights of not knowing what to do, until Midler became lost in a foggy mangrove swamp. Autumn was cruel to Silver and Goldie. After laying her eggs, the Seine boat came, and although they escaped, many fine mullet were caught that day. Weak from spawning and jumping over nets, Goldie and Silver then faced a terrible new threat. Red tide was spreading across the green waters of the Gulf, choking and killing every fish it touched. Goldie, coughed Silver, something's hurting my gills. Go west, warned Goldie's little voice, to escape this disease. Past Bayou La Batre to the sound of Mississippi. Down in the depths of the mangrove swamp crawled a mysterious hermit crab who heard more than he spoke. He wrote with his claws in the muddy bottom a note, try something new when the old doesn't work. Now the chances of finding Goldie were fairly next to none, and most mullet would have turned tail, grown faint, or given up. But old Midler didn't fret those ifs, ands, or buts, because he had steel in his gizzard and iron in his guts. And he would search forever, if that's how long it took. So what if I failed? I will try and try again, and be stubborn in the quest for my long-lost friend. Overhead, a wandering albatross said, great storms I have flown into, and great storms I have flown through, but none like the doozy down south that's a-brewin'. To save your buddy, you must do what no mullet has ever done. You must cross the tall waters of the Gulf of Mexico, faster than the fiercest storm. Old Midler didn't waver, waffle, or even hesitate. He lit out across the Gulf just ahead of the storm's gale, for he had learned his lesson good. He had learned his lesson well. Act fast when danger lurks, in order to prevail. What a tempest it was! The wind howled, the seas tossed, as the hurricane smashed into the Gulf coast, sinking ships and swamping homes, whipping up a storm surge that was 3 stories tall, until bridges fell and the levee broke, leaving folks stranded without electricity or hope. Silver was too poor for such a terrible storm. Goldie, she cried, and her tired fins she waved as the awful hurricane swept her away. For 2 days after the storm made land, Midler rescued frightened fingerlings and searched for his friend. Rescuing and searching without food or sleep, for old Midler was twice the mullet that he used to be. Finally, he found Goldie, stuck in the mailbox of a flooded neighborhood. His eyeglasses were broken, his golden tongue rusty, and everywhere around him disaster and misery. Night was falling fast on New Orleans, the darkest, cruelest night Big Easy had ever seen. "Come on, Goldie," Midler said. "We're going home." But Goldie's tongue was silent. His face sadly frowned. After losing his precious silver, he just didn't care anymore. But Midler was a true leader, of that you can be sure, because a true leader leads even when no one feels like following. And the good people down in New Orleans sing a snappy song whenever their fortune turns mean. Midler made up a melody to help Goldie paddle on. "Hang on, buddy, hang on, mate, we have swam since early, but we must swim until late. So chin up, fins out, and there's nothing to fear. Half of any victory is learning to persevere. For it's coldest and darkest right before dawn, and quitters might quit, but heroes carry on." And thus old Midler did what even a golden tongue couldn't do. He talked his best buddy into swimming the whole city through. From Waveland to Biloxi, life would never be the same. The black grouper hurt, the red snapper grieved. The white trout groaned, the speckled trout wept. The Spanish mackerel suffered, and the kings got the blues. It was awful what every Gulf creature went through. But from New Orleans to Ocean Springs, strangers helped strangers, and strangers became friends, for the whole Gulf Coast were being good neighbors. By the time they passed Pensacola, or maybe it was Mobile, Goldie decided if people could rebuild, then surely a mullet could too. Mobbed in Cook Bayou by a rowdy school of little shorties, Goldie realized it was time to stop grieving and time to get busy polishing his rusty tongue by being a good daddy. He taught the little shorties to go around danger, and when to jump high, and when to dive down, and when to quietly lie. He taught them to play fair, to always keep cool, and how to swim straight when you swim in a school. To be ever wary and to their gizzards remain true, he shared all his wisdom like a wise mullet will do. Time passed in Cook Bayou. The shorties grew large and swam on, until only Midler and Goldie called the muddy waters home. On low tide their scales ached and they hardly ever spoke. On high tides they recalled the glory days and how they used to jump. One gentle evening as the sun began to set, Midler said, "Goldie, I'm sure am glad that we met." "Midler," Goldie answered, "you are the best that's ever been." "Oh, Goldie," replied Midler, "why don't you stop pulling my fin?" For he knew how Goldie's tongue could fancy up the truth, but Goldie meant well, and Goldie meant it truly. From the bottom of his gizzard to the tip of his golden tongue, "Many wondrous things have I seen," Goldie said, as he rubbed his wizened chin, "but nothing more wondrous than an ever loyal friend." I hope you enjoyed the second book in this trilogy, Old Midler Saves the Day, and I hope it made you smile too.